Hi, everybody. My name is Lia Grainger, and welcome to Curtain Call, a weekly interview series with powerful women in the arts, presented by FabCollab and with support from Heritage Canada. We're very excited this week to have a really special guest. Her name is Lia, and she's an incredible hip hop and spoken word artist. She was born and raised in her home community of Skokie within the Coast Salish territory, and she's an activist, filmmaker. She's doing all different kinds of work, writing, performing her own music for more than a decade. There's so much to talk about. Welcome to our program. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for reaching out and having me join today and just share a little bit about my story and my journey. I'm really excited.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being with us here today. I think maybe it would be great for people who are unfamiliar with your work, just maybe if you could tell us just a little bit about your roots, about where you're from, and your path to finding music in this way.
Okay, Alia Tilsqui, Tahoma Tisqui to Solomation. I have roots in Musqueam, Samath, Scowlitz, and here in Skokie. That is the 4 different communities that my grandparents come from. And so my parents are both Stalo. I grew up in a small town called Chilliwack, and the actual pronunciation of the town is Chilqueac. And when we first had settlers come to our territory, they could not pronounce Chilqueac, and they bastardized the name to become Chilliwack. And it actually means a place where many tribes gather. And it was a high traffic trading place where a lot of tribes would meet, the town of Chilliwack here where I grew up. And so I'm very excited to represent, Coast Salish people, Coast Salish culture, our history, our language, and bringing all of that forward in my identity, especially by using my traditional name, which is Aalia, which means someone with a vision. Or in our traditional community setting, it would be someone who talked with babies and talked to them about where they came from, what their purpose is, and what they're here to do this time in this lifetime, because we believe in reincarnation as well. And so I really felt it was important for me to start using my traditional name in my performance life, in my film career, in my scholastic studies, and bringing forth my ancestors in everything that I do and what I believe is my true identity.
That's amazing. So how did you find your way? How did you find music? How did you connect to hip hop? And how did this become the way that you express your message and your artistry?
It's a pretty interesting story, and it takes us all the way back to 2004. 2004 and 5, I'll say. And I was just coming off a very deep spiritual journey, which was launched because I was going through a lot of mental health issues at that time. I was lost, I was depressed, I had high levels of anxiety. I had a real, let's say, identity crisis. Mm-hmm. And for me, what that meant in my life was running, chasing, looking for the next thing, and really sort of, I think, acting out against all of the racism and the trauma I had experienced as a young Indigenous woman, and not realizing that that actually was an issue. I felt like things were good, I was in university, I was thriving, but all the while I had this deep sadness and a lot of trauma that I had not identified yet and really brought to the surface. And so what ended up happening is I was hospitalized for my mental health. I was under the care of my psychiatrist. And after coming out of that, I really had no idea what I was going to do next or where I was going to go next. And that's when I was confronted deeply with my culture. After going through a spiritual awakening, you would think, okay, that's it. Now I know who I am. And that's just not how it works. There's still so much work to do once you come out of that and enter into the real world, what we call the outside world. You're in the safety net, this cocoon of spiritual practice. You're around your people. You know what your job is. You know what your purpose is. It's all very clear within the confines of that spiritual society, but in the real world, I still had all the same.
Allie's the best, but can I tell you, it's totally freaking nuts right now because his parents are staying in our bedroom and his brother is staying in our living room and we're staying at my mom's house. But we got a new place October 1st. We're moving to Namago, 2267 Lakeshore West, right in front of Holiday Park, and I can't wait. Oh, did you use the skirt in the video shoot? Is that what I see in the photo?
Really took one of those wraps and I went to this audition with it, thinking that it would just be an experience. I didn't really feel like much was going to come out of it. And it was so embraced and so celebrated by Archer Pachowis and JB, the First Lady, who were working together to create this theater company. They called me and offered me a spot, and I was so elated to finally be put on a path. I felt like it was the start of this new journey, this new me, something that I could attach to that was going to start to build me up again. So I actually moved.
What did it feel like to perform that for the first time? Like, were you afraid, or was it like, did it feel good afterwards? Like, what were your feelings then?
Honestly, I felt terrified through the whole thing. To even just have people hear my words, which I felt like were not important, and why would anyone care what I had to say? And even afterwards, waiting for a call to hear whether or not I was accepted into this program, it was going to take me anywhere, was terrifying.
Yeah.
On that same rap piece, it propelled me through the program. I eventually ended up performing that as our final wrap up. And I remember they had gotten us a spot on stage downtown Vancouver at the Art Gallery.
Oh, wow.
And it was my first time performing. They had taken the original track and gotten a band with, I remember Jason Burnstick was a part of that because that's the first time I'd met him. And same with another artist that's pretty well known in Vancouver now. And performing with a live band for the first time too was just, it was way beyond what I could have ever imagined that little, poetry closet raps were going to take me. And that's actually how I met my rap partner, who we had performed together in a duo called Rapture Rising together for a long time. And she had approached me. She was there for an open mic night, which was adjacent to that audition. And she had approached me afterwards and said, hey, I have this song, it would be cool if we worked together. And there formed a partnership that actually took me many years into my rap career after that.
That's amazing. So yeah, it's pretty incredible to think about the fact that also you were performing something that came from like such a deeply personal place and from these like really personal struggles. So it seems like just so brave, and that must connect audiences. I think people can feel that, like when something actually comes from like a place of truth. So that's really powerful. Can you tell me about the group that rose out of that, about Rapture Rising?
Oh, that was such an amazing time in my life, honestly. Carrie Lynn, aka Numinous, aka Famantalat, she had a huge impact on her growth at that time. She was already living a sober lifestyle. She was so grounded, I felt like, in who she was in her art and what she had to say as an artist. And to team up with her and have her support me to build myself back up was so huge for my rise at that time and my identity. And it was sort of this huge snowball effect because she had already sort of established herself as an artist and had been asked to do performances she pulled me on stage, I remember, for the first time to perform our first song together, which was called Down to Ride. And we performed at the Media Club downtown by CBC Radio.
Yeah, I know
I
it.
remember the audience was huge. The club was packed. And I remember going over my raps over and over again. And a little secret too, a funny thing, is that if we were to perform more than one song in a set in the very beginning, early days, I always wrote the first lyrics right here on my
You needed a cheat sheet.
Yeah, I was so afraid I was gonna blank, and not being any kind of freestyle artist at the time, I would have just been standing there with nothing to say as the beat's rolling and everyone's looking at me, and that is like everyone who's a performer, that's their deepest fear. Okay,
totally.
And so I used to write the beginnings of each verse, like, okay, 1, 2, like the first 3 words, or okay, then the second verse is these are the first 3 words. And I've messed up lots on stage since then. I still do sometimes. It just depends on the situation. But I can freestyle now, so I can get myself out of it easier.
But you needed something just to get it rolling back then. That's fair.
Exactly. And so that was the launch of, I guess, our career together. And we got asked to perform everywhere after that. You know, Aboriginal Day, the National Aboriginal Achievement Awards was one of the big ones. We did big festivals. We did the Jazz Festival in Vancouver. We did a big... it was like an activism festival or something back then. And I feel like if I had been in a more grounded place, because my sort of journey with myself has been like this, it's been up and down, that I may have been more accountable to the business side of being in music.
Yeah.
I was just having a lot of fun. And not that it was reckless by any account, but that's just who I am. I'm very free and fly by the seat of my pants. Carolyn is very linear, and like, this is the order of operations, and the poor woman had to kind of like put up with the fact that I was flighty the entire time we were in a group together. You know, we had a lot of fun, but she was like, we're supposed to be here an hour ago, and I'm like, you know, that was just sort of the nature.
Like, I'm here now.
Of our yin and yang. Yeah, exactly. And we ended up disbanding the group. It was nothing negative. It was the fact that we were in 2 different places in our lives. And when I had come back to Chilliwack, she had already been living back here for quite some time. We did start Music Mondays to rev it up again, to see if we had more music in us to create. And she ended up going more with her art. She's a huge mural artist in the Valley now. If you go anywhere, even in Granville Island, Granville Island, the highway, all of the schools around here, you'll see her artwork everywhere.
That's cool. We should talk to her at some point as well. I'm sure.
I really feel like you should. Yeah, you should have her on your show. She's amazing. And yeah, so it was nothing negative that disbanded our group. It was just time. And I kept going with music because I really do music where and when I can fit it in. And it took me a long time to even write this last album, because I was doing my undergraduate, and then I launched into my master's at UBC. So it was just hard to write and make time for someone else to write music together. But we've always talked about a reunion album, so that may happen at some point.
Well, I hope so. That would be wonderful. And yeah, it is. It's just like, being an artist is such a complicated path in terms of finding balance, or it's like, are you going to be the type of person that's like, I'm going to pursue this at the cost of everything else? Or do you want to be able to be like more than one thing? Like you are, you know, it's like, are you going to just be an artist, or are you going to also like pursue these other careers, or like family, or all of these things? It's like finding a balance, and even like figuring out what you want takes time.
That's exactly what it is. And for me, being a mom and having an 18-month-old, an 11-year-old, an 8-year-old, having goals in my film career, I never want to be owned by anything. And it's so funny, because my grandmother was just sharing a story about her younger brother who I know as Uncle Speedy. Never met him. I was too young, but my grandma's 94 years old.
Wow.
So when she tells stories, she's talking about the 1930s.
That's
when,
incredible.
Yeah, when her younger brother was performing live on the radio, and he was sponsored by the Nabisco Cookie Company, I think. No, Dad's Cookie.
Wow.
And he had a contract with Dad's Cookies. So he was disabled, and he played the guitar opposite with his other hand. So he had to flip it upside down. He picked with his bad arm, and then he played it upside down the other way with his good hand. And he was actually really talented. So he had a contract to perform live on the radio ever so many times. And she told me this cool story about how when she was in residential school, it was her birthday. And one of the, I think, nurses worked there, and nuns took her upstairs and said, "Oh, I just wanted to bring you upstairs so that you could help me with some chores." And she thought it was weird, but went with her. And she turned on the radio, and all of a sudden she heard her brother's voice saying, "Hello, Rena, I'm just sending you a birthday wish for your birthday." And she cried hearing her brother's voice come through the radio, because she was all alone at residential school.
Yeah.
And he sang and played for her that day. But he eventually, he ran away, and he escaped his contract. He gave them the slip, and he never went back. And that was because he never wanted to be owned by anyone. He didn't like living in Vancouver. It was lonely. He was alone in his apartment. He had a driver who would come pick him up to perform and then drop him off again, take him anywhere that he wanted. But he didn't like living out there. He wanted to be home with his family. And he eventually, I don't know what that's called, he abandoned his contract.
Mm-hmm.
And back then there's no social media, phones, or anything like that, right? So all he had to really do was just leave. And he told my grandma it was because he never wanted to be owned by anybody, and he wanted to be free and to make his own decisions and live his life. And I think I kind of feel like that. I don't want music to ever own me, or to have to do it because that's what the fans want, or that demand is honestly too much for me. I really want to be free in my art and free to move about between things how I feel, and that's just who I am and who I've always been. And so if I'm feeling like a writer director, at this point in my life, that's what I'm focusing on, that's what I'm going to focus on. But music is always going to play a strong role in who I am.
And it's so cool that you have that like familial history of music, that this like person like so long back, like on the radio, like in Vancouver so many years ago, and then like absconding, like escaping from that. And like that's such a cool story.
That's really interesting. She just told me that story a couple of weeks ago when I was visiting her.
How did you find your, like, you're a rapper? I mean, you're obviously many things, but that's like one of the ways you express yourself through music. And like, why that medium? Like, why that as opposed to any other sort of like musicality? Like, what is it about rap that called to you?
I think it is because that's what I grew up on. Mm-hmm. I grew up listening to Lauryn Hill, Tupac, Biggie, a lot of the inspiring storytellers who were talking about what it was like to grow up and exist in their reality. Mm-hmm. And it really has always been at its roots anyways, not speaking so much to the current commercial rap that you would hear, which honestly most of it I don't understand, but some of it I do like. Even Kid Cudi was really inspiring for me. His first album, Man on the Moon, that it was a way for us to speak of our oppression, and it was a way for us to, you don't have to be this talented singer, with a huge range. You just have to be able to write poetry and to speak it. Mm-hmm. And for me, that was more freeing than singing. Always felt like you had to be a good singer, that there was like these high levels to achieve with And I never really believed in myself as a singer because I had other singers around me who I always felt like were so much better. And that was just my insecurity. I actually take singing lessons now, and I'm realizing things about the voice as an instrument. Anyone can sing, I'm telling you right now. If
People
you
keep
want to
telling me this. I'm very convinced I'm just like terrible, but singers will tell me this constantly.
No.
They're like, no, you can do it. I'm like,
no, it's true. It's an instrument like anything else. If you pick up the flute, hey, you don't know, what does this mean? What is this? Like, how do I blow into it effectively? But if you practice the flute 10,000 hours, you're going to be an amazing flute player. And all singing is that same thing. It's breath. It's loosening of the jaw, of this larynx muscle. It's getting the tongue out of the way. It's warm up. It's repetition. I've been able to do some things with my voice recently in voice lessons that I just never thought was possible. I thought that I had a range and that was limited and that was it. But it's actually like any instrument. It's practice, and it's learning how to access those parts of your voice that you just didn't know you knew how to do.
right.
But rap was always something that was accessible to me anyways, because I've always been really good at English. I've always been good with vocabulary. I've always been good with communication. And rap was something that I could understand through basic poetry lessons. You know, this is what a cadence is. This is where you put the rhyme word. This is how you line up, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I think it was really just the influences from those artists early when I was a teenager. That's what I listened to. That's what I like. That's what I attached to. So being like them was completely natural for me. It was something that I wanted to do too. And I thought was cool, and
it is cool.
Like whatever you feel like when you're a young person.
Yeah.
Now I just feel like it's just a part of who I am. But it was definitely the closest thing that we had as young Aboriginal kids that felt like was representative of who we were. There wasn't Native artists. There was people like Buffy St. Marie and Susan Aglucart, but there was no one that we identified with.
Right.
And we wanted to be those people that young people could identify with.
Yeah, that's amazing. Maybe could you tell me a little bit sort of what sort of stories you're telling in your music? Like what are you saying? Like what are some of the messages, or maybe you could tell me about a particular song?
Yeah, for sure. One of my songs, you can look it up on Spotify. Right now, all of my music is under my current, it's going to switch again. The funny thing is there's this running joke about rappers and like how they're always changing their name.
That is true.
I'm that rapper, okay?
There you go.
I started out as T Melody, I was Abdexact, and I was Kalia, and they all had different meanings for me and kind of highlight different moments in my life. And I feel like I'm actually closest to who I truly am in this moment, and that's not going to change again. And it just took a long time for me to really, I think, embrace my identity, especially my Indigenous identity. But I write some songs that are about being in love. I write some songs that are about being activists. I write some songs that are about just having fun, you know, because it doesn't all have to be serious all the time. But Runaway is that song where I talk about how you make mistakes in life, and sometimes it feels like that's all that people identify you as. They identify you for either like you fell on your face and you know you dishonored your family, or you for women there's a lot of like slut shaming, you slept with this person, you did all those things where it's shameful, and in a community like ours that news travels like wildfire. And then you do good things and it feels like those are short-lived. It's a short-lived, you know, high in success, but the mistakes tend to follow you around more than anything else. And Runaway is really that song talking about young Indigenous women and how tough it is for them in a white patriarchal world where white people, let's say like mainstream culture and especially white men are always so easily led into places of success, and places are made and branded for them to succeed. And it's like that in the film industry, it's like that in the music industry. If you're a man, people just assume, okay, he's a good rapper, he has a huge following, all these girls like him, like that kind of thing. For us as young Indigenous women in music, people automatically assume that we were whack, or that we didn't write our own raps, or that, you know, we didn't have the stamina, or whatever kind of negative connotations. And so Runaway encompasses all of that. It's about wanting to run away from everything and escape, but how are you going to come back and realize that that person looking at you in the mirror is who you are, who you have, who you're always going to be, and how are you going to embrace her? How are you going to love her? How are you going to rise above all of that negativity and all of that doubt that people put on us as young Indigenous women, and be strong anyways, and really truly embrace who you are and what your gifts are and your path forward, and tell everyone that you can do it anyways. That, I feel like that's what Runaway is about. It's really about, okay, I've done all these things, I've messed up, sure, but I'm still going to, in the end, I'm going to cheer for all of those ones who are working hard. I'm going to cheer for all those ones who've fallen and gotten back up again. I'm here, I did it, I believe in you. If I did it, you can do it too. That's really what that song is about for me.
Yeah, there's such a positivity to it. Like, things are hard, but you know, giving yourself that credit, and then and giving it to other people that are going through the same thing is really wonderful.
Totally.
And yeah, there is it's such a great medium for someone like yourself who's a writer, just because it's poetry, and you can, it's like, with something like dance, I would just speak to so many different artists, and sometimes it's so abstract, like you're trying to say something, but it's it's not literal. And it's really amazing, that this medium, it's you can really just tell your story and say what you mean. It's very powerful.
Totally. Thank you. I used to write very abstract, actually.
Really?
I used to sort of speak in metaphors and riddles until I realized that I was the only one who was understanding what I was saying. Yeah. And I had to be a little bit more literal. It's a very fine dance that you do with the words, not to be too literal, like I was out walking and this guy gave me a bad look. Yeah, you can't. It's a real fine line between.
It's something that I think about. I think about it a lot. I'm a dancer, so it's yeah, it's generally it's not literal at all, but it's but I want to actually say something, so I'm yeah, but then it's if you're too literal, it becomes a bit cheesy and a bit. Yeah, it's you have to, but it's where is the line? You want people to understand, but you don't want to have to be hitting them over the head with it, because people don't want that either.
Exactly. That's the fine line that we play with as artists, I think, and that you start to refine as you become more mature as an artist, and that you start to become really good at, in writing songs. And I have songs that I wrote randomly sitting around a campfire, and I think, okay, that's not my story anymore, that's not who I am, but this is still someone's story. And I think about women who are in domestically violent relationships, or women who are constantly being cheated on, or women who are struggling and living hand to mouth, right? And I've been in those different places throughout my life, and just because I'm not there right now, it doesn't mean that I'm not speaking to something that was real for me at one time. And so I still perform songs that I wrote, 10 years ago, and I'm still refining them, and I'm still finding truth in those words, and I have a phone full of voice memos where I just stop in my car and I hear something, and it's for the children, you know, it's for the children that we lost in residential school. It's like I hear their voice, and just feel like it's really important to represent everyone, and but still be me at the same time. You know, there's no way that I can say everything, but I can touch and be a voice for those people who don't have a voice.
And like as time passes in your life and in your career, I guess it's like you're accumulating this body of work that like speaks to all these different stages in your own life, and like through that probably speaks to just like a wide swath of people, because you've had, you know, a range of experiences over time as time passes. That's why it's so cool as artists get older. Not that we're old, but like, you know, it's just like it's there is a wisdom that like starts to show in your work.
Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly how I feel about it. It's a representation, and you know, who are we but voices for people, and we have to represent the dark places and the light places, because those are the things that people attach to. I had that when I would listen to a song and I'd think, oh, they're talking about my life. And then when people say that to me, I have someone send me a message and say, oh, the first thing I do is like come home and put on your song. I'm like, whoa, wow. I'm that person now. It's so weird. But at the same time, okay, there's a reason why I did this music. It's literally not to have 1 billion views or fans. It's for that one person that day. It's for me mostly.
That was something like that was something I wanted to ask you about. Just like if you've had any memorable like sort of interactions with people like responding to your music, like if you've like had conversations with people or any experiences of like how people respond.
Yeah, recently I did a performance for Vines Festival. Shout out to Vines, because they're such a great organization, community organization who does amazing things within the city of Vancouver and beyond. And I went back and did a headliner performance for them recently in Trout Lake Park. And I honestly didn't even realize I was waiting for my turn to perform, and it was getting on in the agenda, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is taking forever. And I realized I was going to be the last person to perform that night, which was like, okay, now I have to really go out there and close out this evening. And at the end of the show, there was a lineup of people waiting to talk to me, and they all just wanted to say how much they enjoyed the show and what song was their favorite, and they really loved the message that I shared. They loved my words about, you know, missing and murdered women, or the residential school discoveries, or, you know, I talk about a lot of different things. I do tell a bit of a story or narrative usually when I plan my shows, and sometimes I do spoken word, sometimes I don't. It's always different. It just depends on how I'm feeling. But yeah, I was so surprised. I just thought, why would people want to talk to me, or why was it so important for them to come and tell me that? And mostly they just wanted to share their gratitude. That was it. And one of them was an elder. She's a woman that I first met a few months earlier at a different show, who just really loved, I guess, the energy, and felt like even though she's older, she was represented. And she came back to this show to watch again, and I was just surprised, humbled. It's really surprising to me, and I felt so lucky to have all these people who literally wanted to stay afterwards and just express their little piece and their gratitude for me for being there and for sharing. And yeah, just took pictures with them, and I don't know,
connect with you, I guess.
I guess
like
so
too. Work touches you, they're like, I just want to like meet this person and like know this person for a second. It's pretty
exactly
cool.
It's totally amazing to me, because even honestly, if I seen an artist and I thought they were awesome, I might be too shy to go and say it. People don't think of me as shy, but I don't like awkward situations. And I would honestly feel like, okay, that's too much. Like, they did good, but I'm not gonna go tell them that. And then these people, you know, take it upon themselves, and they really want it. Like, one was a couple, an Asian woman and her husband, who was Lolita Man, just a wide range of different kind of characters.
Yeah.
And anyways, it was just humbling, and it was cool, and I felt lucky in that moment to be received in that way.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And you have another event coming up, which is actually one of the first reasons I was like, oh, I have to reach out to this woman, is on the September 30th at the Museum of Anthropology, which I actually grew up right next to. I lived in UBC student housing when I was a baby, so I actually learned to walk at the Museum of Anthropology amongst like all the totem poles in that place. So whenever I'm in Vancouver, I go and visit it. But that's neither here nor there, because on September 30th, there's going to be a night of poetry, hip hop, and spoken word to mark the first Orange Shirt Day, which is also the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And so there's going to be a wide range of performers. That sounds like it's going to be a really incredible event, and you're going to be performing there. So yeah, there's going to be an Orange Lantern procession, I believe, and all the proceeds are going to the Indian Residential School Survivor Society. So if people want tickets, they can go to the Museum of Anthropology, and it's free for Indigenous peoples. Yeah, like, how are you feeling about that event coming up?
It's sort of the same as any really important event that I'm asked to be a part of, but I think this one touches really close for me to home, because my grandfather went to residential school. My grandmother, who's still alive, she went to residential school and survived. My grandfather was really negatively affected by residential school. He was an alcoholic, and for a lot of his years while my dad was growing up, and that affected me indirectly, because of my childhood and my upbringing. My grandmother on my mother's side went to residential school, and so did my grandfather on my mother's side. So, I didn't know this until I had sort of identified some of my trauma and dealt with, I think, some of those identity crisis pieces that I was talking about. But residential school has affected me very directly.
Mm-hmm.
And finding those kids, the 215, it sent shockwaves into our communities, and it triggered many of us and put us in a place of deep mourning, because we all think of our own children. I think of my son, who's 11, as I said, my daughter is 8, and my 18-month-old baby. And if someone were to come here tomorrow and say, mandated by law, they need to come with me, and there's nothing you can do about it, I don't know what I would do. And to think about that was our great-grandparents' reality, or that they were tricked and told that this was a good thing, that they were taking them away to school, they would be educated and taken care of, but they weren't. And then to not have them return home is just so heartbreaking. And I still feel very emotional just talking about it. So to be asked to be a part of something that is this, I think, important and a marker in our histories and honor, that they thought of me and invited me to be there, is huge. And I really need to be thoughtful about what I'm going to share that evening. And I have a week to prepare. I'm always prepared, but I think this is different. And I think it's a marker in my own realization of where I'm at in my career, and representing my community, and sharing those important messages, having a platform. They tell you that the more, I guess, successful you are, the more responsibility you have. It's opposite of how you think in mainstream with people like the Kardashians, or I don't know, even who else in popular culture, but people like that who create a platform for themselves, and then it kind of seems like it takes them a little while to really realize that there's responsibility there. But we are told that from a young age, and comes from our values as Indigenous people, that the more, I think, you call it bigger or popular or whatever that you become in your community, you become an ambassador, and there's actually more responsibility on your shoulders. So that's what I think of my platform is a responsibility, and I don't take it lightly. And I just also always want to show that young Indigenous women are strong and we're capable, and that we have a message and we have something to say and we have something to share. So to be invited has been very humbling, and I'm excited.
I'm sure it's going to be a very powerful event. And it sounds like you're in a really good place to be one of the people that has the voice and that is like in a position that you have this platform to be able to share your message and to share about your experiences. So
thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it. And also too, it's funny how you shared the story about growing up in UBC. I also lived at UBC as a toddler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I had an international student who was my babysitter, and I think she spoke Somali or something. She was from Africa,
Okay.
and my mom said that I understood the language she spoken because I was with her, like, more than
Yeah.
my mom. My mom was busy with her studies, and so we grew up in family housing, and my brother and my sister remember, but I don't. I was too young. But I've seen pictures of myself. I had short, spiky hair, and I was raised also partially at UBC. And when I returned to do my bachelor's in 2014, I think it was, when we moved there, I brought my two young kids as well. So
Oh,
they
wow.
went through, yeah, my son went to U Hill and my daughter was at the kids club. And we spent 4 years living there while I did my undergraduate studies. So we're very connected to the UBC experience as well.
And it is an experience. It's like you're out there, like basically in the forest. It's pretty amazing. It's a pretty cool place to be. I was there as a very little kid, like early 80s.
Oh, yeah.
There, because the family housing there is kind of like in the woods. At least where we were, it was this place called like UBC's completely changed and developed, and I go up there and now I'm like, wow, I don't recognize it. But back then it was like the housing was like in the woods, so it was pretty cool to be a little kid there. But
Very
anyway,
cool.
is there anything else you'd like to share? I don't know if you want to like share a little bit of music, or if you wanted to tell us like where people can reach out to you on social media, or anything else that you'd like to share.
I just think if people want to hear my music before I do some cross branding, you can go to Spotify, Apple Music, really any platform, because I release it through a larger distributor.
Okay.
Who then puts it on basically any platform where you can listen to music. And the spelling for it is KELIYA. And
we'll put it in the chat, and we'll put it on our website too, so people can find you.
Perfect. Yeah, go to my page. I've released 5 of the songs from my 10-track album so far. I'm working with my producer to get the rest of the tracks out, but he's actually going through a whole bunch of personal shifts right now in his life, and so there's been a bit of a halt in releasing the rest of the tracks, but they're there, and I'm excited to release those because I'm working on a new album right now. And so
Wonderful.
That's something that people they can know, and that they can be excited about. Hopefully, I'm also working on a feature-length documentary that is called Slali, which means woman in our language, and it's about confronting traditional gender roles in our community through the lens of the transgender experience. I'm a huge supporter of the trans community because my sister came out as a trans woman in the 90s, and her story is very incredible. Her perseverance, where she has, I think, taken trans identity within Stalo community and culture has been very inspiring to watch and to witness. And I'm telling her story as a documentary filmmaker to let other people know, other trans youth who are coming out now, that it's okay and that they're not alone. And that although it's very hard, we can somehow together start to transform some of the traditional gender roles in our communities, and that they don't have to feel afraid or alone. And so people can look for my film work as well, via my Vimeo page at Alia, and see other short works that I've done. My short work of fiction called The Roundhouse is going to be, you'll be able to access that as well online soon. I just have to sort of figure out a streaming platform that's appropriate. And I've just been really busy because I kind of have my hands in a lot of different.
Yeah. I was like, oh, a feature film, a short fictional work, an album, 3 kids, moderately busy. It's like a little bit of creative output.
Yes, exactly. And I actually have been playing around with the idea of putting out a book of poetry as well, because my sort of, I guess, collection of works I've been sharing has been around for a long time. And I think it's a good idea to put out written works that again, it's just about really reaching other Indigenous women with my work. That's always my first audience that I care about, is other Indigenous youth. Not that I'm an Indigenous youth, but other Indigenous women as well as youth. And I feel like I don't want to just sit on my poetry and only people who see me perform can access it. I'd love to put something out like that, but it's just on a list of things that I'd like to do.
Well, we'll find like all of your links and all the places that you are on the web, so that people can sort of keep track as your different projects come out and like come to fruition. And if people are in Vancouver, they can check out that event at the Museum of Anthropology.
Yeah, exactly. And I might be sharing some of my poetry. Like I said, I kind of just sort of go with what feels good and appropriate and what have you. But I have like this little prayer that is, it's like a poem, but it's also a prayer, and it's prayers for the land. And so it might be appropriate to share this, because I feel like right now we need to pray for the land, and we're being shaken right now, I feel like, by the Creator, and we're being waken up, and we're being reminded that, you know, we're not invincible. Human nature cannot go on the way that we have been. We cannot continue to abuse the environment and live to see 7 more generations. And if we don't change now, and we don't wake up to the impact we're having on the earth, that we're just not going to survive. And so I'd love to share this work called Prayers on the Land.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. Prayers on the land, prayers that go hand in hand. Prayers upon layers of broken promises you must understand. Layers of prayers for our ancestors who lay as our foundation for our multiplication, to fight the gentrification, the almost extinct nation, the nation of all nations, First Nations, First Peoples, Aboriginal and Native, Kwelmuch to Squee. That's me. That's who I've been. But what have you seen? My future is in front of me, to lay another layer of foundation for my seed, free my seed. So that's Prayers on the Land.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah. No worries.
Cool. And thank you so much for being with us here today. It's been really wonderful. I feel like you've shared so much about your story and just got a lot of wisdom. So we really appreciate you taking the time to join us here today.
Yeah, I just appreciate your kindness and your patience. I know it wasn't easy to get a hold of me and sort of like keep me on the track of making this happen, but you were wonderful and persistent and just kind. And I need more kind people in my life, because you know, I have my ups and downs. I have my mental health. And I have my fallacies. I'm a human being and I just can only do so much in one 24-hour period.
Fair enough.
I'm just glad for the opportunity, and I think what you're doing, your work, it's amazing too, and you play a large part in bringing powerful women to the forefront and sharing our voice and our story. So please continue.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I feel lucky to be getting to do this and getting to speak with all these people. It's been wonderful. And actually, before we let you go, before we say goodbye to everybody, I just wanted to tell people that we actually have an event coming up on October 2nd, but it's in Toronto, where we're featuring, it's called Women in Song, Strange Darlings, and it's four singers from different cultural backgrounds paired with 4 dancers from different backgrounds, so it's different styles. There'll be like flamenco or like indigenous fancy shawl dance with sort of classical Indian music, and the dancers have all been commissioned to create little choreographies to go with a particular song, and there'll also be some flamenco, and it's all going to be backed by this global music band Ventanas. So yeah, and it's at the Aga Khan Theatre, the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto on October 2nd, and people can actually attend it live, which is a new and wonderful thing, and we're so excited about that. And then of course it will also be, like all of our events, is going to be streamed online at FabCollab.ca and through the National Arts Center on Facebook, Small World Music on Facebook. So you can check out that at FabCollab.ca, and we'll also we're going to find all of your places online and put them together on our website, so if people want to find you, they can also just look for you there. So thank you so much for being with us today. It's been really wonderful to talk to you, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm sure there's a lot on the schedule.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to some fun things. It's all good. And again, just thanks for having me. It was really great chat, and I hope to be catching up with you next week.
Yeah, one day I hope we can have you in one of our shows.
Yeah, that would be great.
We'll either come out to the West, which is like a long-term plan, I think, is to be doing stuff more nationally, or have you out in Ontario. We'll see. But thank you so much.
That would be great. Who is the fancy dancer that you got?
Cody Harper.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she's really amazing. We've actually had her before, and she's wonderful. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely grew up in powwow, and I fancy dance and jingle dance as well, and it's just so beautiful that you're bringing that forward as well. So cool.
Oh, it's so cool. We had her once before. It's like a real showstopper. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I hope that goes well for you guys as well, and just enjoy.
Yeah, you too, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Okay.